Hare Krishna, welcome for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Just a minute. There is somebody at the door. I have to take care. Okay. So let me just share my screen. Perfect. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We'll start with our regular prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti Namine. नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Thanks a lot for joining today's session. In the past session, we actually completed the Bhakti Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually middle sixth chapter, starting chapter 7 to 12. And we also had a concise summary of these chapters to understand the overall theme. So starting this particular chapter is very interesting session of this Bhagavad Gita is going to start. It's called as Jnana Yoga. And in this particular chapter, Krishna is going to establish very important concepts, understanding the importance of uh, what we can accomplish in our life. So activity in what mode to be done is covered in the Jnana Yoga. For what purpose we need to perform the activity, that is covered in Bhakti Yoga. And what exactly is our field of activities and how much we can manage it, it's covered. It's in part of this particular Jnana Yoga. So without ado, let's go into understanding this initial flow of this chapter. So this, what is this quest of influence? Starting from the first verse itself, because in the previous chapter, Krishna established the Bhakti Yoga process. Now, Arjuna wanted to understand more. Now, this is a little theme change, but Arjuna wanted to understand more about some specific concepts, how exactly activities are being carried out. So I have summarized some of this concept and we'll discuss also briefly. So Arjuna asked specifically, what is this Prakriti? And Prakriti is actually material nature. So technically speaking, everything, whatever we see around and within space and across planets, everything can be qualified as a nature. But for us, Prakriti means something which helps us to carry out our activities. So soul desires, if you remember from the fifth chapter, I had given that flow of desire. So soul desires, and it is the action is carried out by Prakriti. So in our context, Prakriti means material nature or the field which is where we are actually performing our activity. That is Prakriti. Now, what is a Purusha? Purusha is the enjoyer of the specific field. So each soul, every soul which is there in specific body, even animal body, tree body, bird's body, all of them are enjoying their specific field. So their specific field, that means the material nature is carrying out the activities as per their desire and they are enjoying that specific field. So Prakriti and Purusha concept is clear here. The next is soul. Now soul is, I'm calling this as an influencer because soul is actually just desiring what to do based on his past experience, based on his intelligence, mind, desire. The desires are originating from the soul, and then they are with, if they are sanctioned by Paramatma or the super soul, then they are carried out into the nature. So every field of activity is governed by some specific Purusha, and one who is directing that Purusha or influencing from within, that is the soul which is present in that particular body. Now, who is the super soul? Super soul, in this particular chapter, we'll go a little deeper to understand exactly what is the concept of super soul. But super soul is present in everybody's heart. He's present across the space. He's present even beyond the space between the material world and spiritual world. So let's reserve discussion for the latter slides. Super soul means, let's understand it, knower of all different types of bodies. Now, what is knowledge? So Arjuna's question is, what is knowledge? And we'll be also discussing the difference between knowledge and the qualities. So knowledge is understanding kshetra and kshetrajna, understanding the field of activities and one who is governing those field of activities. The kshetra means field and kshetrajna means one who knows the field of activities. This combination is the knowledge, and we'll know more about the knowledge, how Krishna establishes this knowledge in this verse, in this particular chapter. And what is the target? What is the goal of this knowledge? That is to achieve the super soul. So this concept, just keep it in back of your mind. Prakriti, the field of activity. Purusha, one who is enjoying that field of activity. Soul, who is influencing that field, who is influencing activities in that field. Super soul, one who knows all the fields of activities as well as all the influencers. That is super soul. Knowledge is to understand the relationship between the kshetra, that is field of activities, and one who knows it. And of course, the goal of knowledge is super soul. So we talked so much about field of activities. Let's understand little more depth. So for
Can I
Arjuna, yes,
can I ask one question? Or
yes.
so how is Prakriti developed? Prakriti comes by experience or is it given by default?
Um, I'll reserve this question. I'll answer in the process of explanation and at the even at the end. So you're asking
Sure.
with how the Prakriti is being developed or whether it is arranged by default.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll answer this particular part.
Okay.
So there is a particular slide on the nature, so I'll answer this particular part there. Okay, so let's understand this field of activity or the field of influence. So for Arjuna, when he was standing on the battlefield, for him at that particular point of time, the field of activities was the battlefield in which he is supposed to conquer the enemy and win this particular war. So that was his field of activities. Most of us, maybe we are working somewhere or we are taking care of certain things or people, that becomes our field of activities. So this kshetra is a place of action, and that is a field of influence. So we also need to understand that all of us have these two circles, the field of influence, the area of influence, and then beyond that, that is the area of concern. So something which we would like to be favorable towards us, the outside area, but we do not have any control over it. That's a field of concern. But something within the field of influence is something which we can actually influence using what? Using this particular body, using intelligence, using mind, using desire, using our senses, using our capability to understand things, capability to convince others. So all various things which are gifted with this particular body, we can influence some specific things. That field of influence is called as kshetra. And who is a kshetrajna? He is a knower, observer, influencer. So one who knows what is my field of activity. I am observing what is happening in the field of activity, and I can also change the course of that activity. So that is that particular, whoever can do this particular changes in the field of activity is a kshetrajna. So Krishna explains the field of activity, that, as you asked in the question, that the nature which is actually being carried out on by the nature, the field of activity, how it is constituted, what are the changes in that field of activity, how it is produced, who is the knower of the field of activities and influences of this knower. So Krishna explains that he is going to explain all these concepts in the course of discussion. Now, what constitute the field of activity, what we call prakriti or nature and all that, what is it all about? If you look at in this list, the soul is not there in this list, but how this desire is actually carried out. Now there are some external things and then there are some internal things. So five great elements, that is earth, water, fire, air, ether, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, that is five karmendriya, five jnanendriya, and the mind, and the five sense objects. So these are all kind of external things which we can visualize, and we know the prakriti, which is carried out, which is actually carrying out these things. And the result of our activities, the desire or hatred, means we may or may not like the results, the happiness, the distress, the aggregate life symptoms, and the convictions or the impressions or the inclinations which are getting developed through this result of this field of activities. All of these are considered in summary to be field of activities and its interactions. So um, this nature, the field of activity, is not just outside nature. It's actually our inner mind intelligence, which is actually influencing that desire. Then how it is being carried out externally, and the resultant reactions on our mind, which the individual soul suffers or enjoy depending on the whether result is favorable or not. All that constitutes the field of activities. Now I have put a very easy slide to understand the field of activities. So if you can see each of the rectangle here, what you can see is an activity of a particular soul. So that soul, for example, I'm sitting here right now in Germany, and I can speak to somebody in India and influence certain things to be carried out, but I cannot influence my neighbor because I do not have control over that. So the field of influence is actually something which I can carry out. Like for example, with Arjuna, with his skills of warriors, he can carry out a lot of things in the battlefield. He can do later on, as the time progresses, he can again perform so many activities. So as if you can see our life on the time scale, our field of influence, field of activity, it keeps on changing. So the way it's there for soul who is embodied, he has certain field of influence. So similarly, the souls, all other embodied souls, it may be animal, reptile, aquatic, whatever. Somebody may be in male body, female body, or even sage body. All of these different souls, even liberated soul also, one who has nothing to do with this particular material world, but because he's still having body, he has certain field of influence. Some of them overlap, some of them we need to cooperate. So I hope this field of activity part is thoroughly clear. And specifically, I kept it super soul separate to highlight that super soul knows all other fields of activities, and and he can influence, he can decide sanction or not sanction all the fields of activities. So super soul actually has a control over every other field of activity, but embodied soul, he can influence only very specific field of activity. Now um, as we discussed some of the concepts at the starting, Krishna also asked what is knowledge. So there are some list of verses which comes in the 12th chapter, which Krishna discusses as a qualities. So if somebody develops those divine qualities, one is qualified to go out of this material world. Then he is eligible to enter into the spiritual world, like equanimity, the humility, the tolerance, and few of the things. And if you see even this list of things, this list of qualities, some of them do overlap. So all these list of qualities, of course, we may not go through each of them, but for our purification, just let's go through few of them. And these qualities are symbol of a person who is in knowledge. The person who is in knowledge, as just look at the last two lines, all these I declare to be knowledge, and besides whatever there may be ignorance. Why is it? I mean, there is no mention of artificial intelligence or some kind of some other field of activities, semiconductors and this and that. But what Krishna is talking here specifically is this list of qualities helps one to elevate his consciousness from material to spiritual level. So any person who is properly he's in sane mind and he's analyzing things properly, who is studying scriptures, applying them in his practical life, trying to improve himself, become better version of himself. All these qualities are listed. I mean, they do manifest in him in due course of time. So few of them, and by the way, these qualities are not only for one life. Life after life, we need to try to excel in every intensity of of these qualities. So humility, pridelessness, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. So even spiritual master is not just a one life thing. Accepting spiritual master helps me to progress in this life, but if I have to take a birth again I should accept a bona fide spiritual master, embodied bona fide spiritual master, again, who can guide me to progress in my next life. Cleanliness, steadiness, absence of false ego, detachment, even-mindedness, unalloyed devotion. So these are all things, constant and unalloyed devotion to me. So these are all comes under the knowledge. So with a person who is equipped with this level of knowledge, aspiring to live in, let me just finish, maybe aspiring to live in the a solitary place. Now, one may not be able to live, but that aspiration is also very, very important. Accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search. That means this particular quest to understand the depth of this knowledge. So even that desire also, Krishna is saying that this also comes under the knowledge. So even accepting, one may not be self-realized, but accepting the importance, it's a sign of progress. So one who is in a path of becoming knowledgeable person, all these steps are very important. So what we do with our field of activity is using our field of activity, using our capability, we are trying to develop these qualities to become better version of ourselves. So this is what constitute the knowledge. Now this chapter appears little more analytical, but the next concepts are not so, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So the question which you asked, Anitaji, it actually comes in this particular section. So link between nature and the soul. So the nature, it constitutes not just what we discussed, the external factors and internal factors and the resultant things. The nature also has very important thing called as modes, the three modes of material nature, and how they are originating is actually depending on the kind of activity one is performing. His inclinations, his own desires decides what kind of mode we are being pushed to. So nature is this particular nature. Now nature is means always understand these three modes of material nature. They cause all material causes and effect, whereas living entity is the cause of suffering and enjoyments. So whatever we see externally happening, actual results are being carried out by material nature. Whereas the results, maybe sufferings or enjoyments or whatever it might be, they are perceived or experienced by the living entity who is influencing that activities. So living entity, while sitting in different bodies, uh, they follow different ways of life, enjoying these three modes of nature because of association with that particular modes of nature, and he meets good and evil amongst various species. So one may be in human body uh, and deciding I may want to drink beer, or I may want to have a few things, and I may just want to stay in ignorance for a long time by having whatever different substances. Or I decide to become more passionate and then focus on my goal and then exercise and then achieve certain material things and feel that sense of accomplishment. It can be in mode of passion. Or I can actually do some certain level of meditation. I can perform the worship. I can contemplate on the philosophical subjects, and I can be in the mode of goodness. So my decision is what is actually helping modes of nature, uh, in which direction I'm going to go. So you understand that, I mean, just imagine certain particle, it is actually connected by three different ropes, and particle has its own way. So our past desires, our past inclinations, they influence what kind of activities we will be performing in our field of activity. Now, it is not just soul who is a part of all these different fields of activity. There is very one important concept comes in. It's called as Paramatma. Um, in this same body, as you can see right side this particular picture, one particular bird is eating the fruits, other is simply observing. How it is being explained? Yet in this body there is another transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, Supreme Proprietor. He is the overseer and permitter. Now there are various interesting aspects are given. First is proprietor. Proprietor means one who owns every single thing. Then overseer. Overseer means who is observing and who knows what course actions are going and what will happen, whether it needs any intervention. He is the overseer. And permitter, one who actually allows certain action to happen. So this Paramatma concept is extremely interesting, and we'll explain more in next two slides about it. So what is this super soul? So first of all, we need to understand that super soul, it's not that my super soul, your super soul, or each of us, although we have localized version of this particular super soul, but they are all interconnected in such a manner that this all super souls can be considered as a one single entity only. So this connects to the concept of Brahman. Now we know the spiritual world where Krishna and all his various incarnations, they are living eternally, and this the bottom side what we see is the different various material worlds, literally millions and billions of them, which are emanating from this Mahavishnu. In between spiritual and material is this material worlds, is this Brahman which is emanating from the Lord. So this Brahman conception, a lot of Mayavadi schools and Brahmavadis, they imagine that this is the topmost thing, and then they have no conception that beyond Brahman there are spiritual worlds where Lord resides and life is very different there. So Krishna establishes very nicely. He says that Brahman, this particular spirit, is beginningless and it is subordinate to me. So it is not supreme, and it is beyond this cause and effects of this particular material world. So super soul exists, pervading everything. He exists in the material world. He exists in the Brahman. He exists in every single universe, between atoms, next to every soul, everywhere he is existing. But he is extremely inert. Although he's a conscious thing, but he is very inert. He is unattached, and he is maintainer of all living beings. Because he's a subtle, it's literally impossible to understand the nature of this Brahman or the Paramatma, because he lies beyond the power of our material senses. He is knowledgeable, he is object of knowledge, goal of knowledge, and situated in everyone's heart. So this Brahman, whoever realizes, not just having the knowledge, but one who realizes, he actually is eligible to go to the Brahman, and knowing that Brahman conception. He no more has any material hankerings or material desires. That is realization. So the part which we discussed at the start of this slide is, although this super soul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided, and he is situated as a one. I mean, I have no material analogy to explain these things. The closest I can imagine maybe some movies like Edge of Tomorrow or somebody. I mean, it's in negative light, but it is some entity who is pervading everywhere. So Brahman is a singular consciousness which is there in the existing beyond material worlds, and it is spread across the material world. It's present in every living entity, and he is a aspect of Supreme Lord, and he is a very, very much well-wisher. In fact, the most well-wisher of every single soul. So he is the one who devours and develops all the phases of life, and in fact, it is said that time is one of the aspect of this super soul, which actually helps things to grow and maybe change the body and then progress souls in different lives, and navigate them, course correct them to come back to the spiritual life. So Krishna says only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and can attain my nature. So this understanding super soul, actually it helps us to appreciate the Krishna's intervention or Krishna's role while performing in these activities in this particular material world. There are various ways to develop this Paramatma. Although I would say, being in Bhakti tradition, already we had discussed this Bhakti part in previous 6 chapters. So goal of life is to return back to the spiritual world. But of course, this Paramatma is their localized aspect of Supreme Lord is already there. And if we can turn to Him, He actually reciprocates and helps us. He's in fact there sitting all the time just to help us out. So, how to realize that and how to reach out to this help of Paramatma? The best part is meditation. We can chant on different mantras, specifically Hare Krishna mantra, and we can perform Jnana Yoga. Or we can cultivate knowledge, we can contemplate, and we can read various scriptures we appreciate, meditate, and through that, through Jnana Yoga, we can actually understand Him. Or we can work without fruitive desires, Nishkam Karma Yoga, and understand that what is my role. Even if each of us introspect our life, wherever we have reached, we can understand this is not by our own efforts. And we can see the hand of Supreme Lord. How He has been helping, how He has been navigating things. So by not working and not having that hankering to enjoy the results, if we work on Nishkam Karma Yoga level, we can actually see the hand of the Lord. We can perceive the Paramatma. And of course, the best is by worshipping Supreme Lord by process of hearing about the Lord. So this process of hearing, discussing, meditating, chanting the glories of the Lord, through this authentic process of Bhakti Yoga, the realization of Paramatma is also there. It is included in this. So one who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being and does not degrade himself by his mind, he can approach the transcendental destination. So important is we see super soul equally present in all living entities, even our enemies, so-called enemies, even our friends, or even other living beings. So when we see the aspect of Paramatma existing everywhere, we do not degrade by our mind, because then we are not like I don't like him, I don't like that, because we know aspect of Paramatma is there, they're helping them from within. The more we understand this aspect of Paramatma, it actually helps us to elevate our mind and not the degrade. And this particular slide, so we discussed about field of activities, we discussed about knowledge, then we discussed about modes of material nature, we discussed about Paramatma. I specifically have included this slide, and I'm happy to answer if time permits any questions over this. But it's very important to understand this process of transmigration, because um, when somebody is knowledgeable, it's very important to understand our field of activities, our field of influence, and how it is going to decide our destiny. So in quick, as you can see on the left hand side, we have soul, super soul. Whatever you see on the left hand side, ego, intelligence, the karma account, all of them constitute our psychophysical nature. And this psychophysical nature is very much aligned with the modes of nature, the modes, the goodness, passion, ignorance, whatever is the prominent. I think in the next chapter we'll discuss more depth about it. But whatever we are prominently developed as a part of our life, and the kind of consciousness we have come up with while living this life, that decides our next destination. So every living entity, for example, tiger or tree or any aquatic or human beings or even demigods or even any living entities, all of them have specific gross body and all of them have targeted subtle nature. So the thing is, our psychophysical nature, it while living itself, it is decided what kind of next body we are going to reach. So when we have developed certain psychophysical nature, and if it matches to some specific target, certain nature of that particular body, then there is this species matching algorithm. This is run by the nature, and depending on what kind of psychophysical nature we have developed, we will acquire that type of life. So for example, if somebody is just interested in eating only non-veg and raw non-veg or whatever, then he may end up having these animal bodies. Somebody is just utilizing life only for the purpose of sleeping longer and longer, may end up becoming polar bears or some things like that. Or somebody is in pure ignorance performing the activities, he may end up becoming that kind of animal. I mean, this is not just an animal species, but of course, if somebody is performing nice activities but still has material desires, he may end up becoming demigod. So it's very important to understand how this our own psychophysical nature, and every destined body, it has its gross body, what we see outside, but it also has its own nature, and that subtle nature, it dominates how much we can access the karma account or intelligence and mind which we have developed. So one thing is about the super soul, whether is granting or not, but of course the kind of nature one has acquired. So if somebody is in tiger body or elephant body, it's practically impossible for them to have some philosophical thoughts or understand this knowledge or getting some higher consciousness. So it's very, very difficult for animals to do that because their subtle nature dominates all the subtle bodies which are existing in that. So using our field of activities, using our knowledge, we should understand how our field of influence need to get progressed. Now, just last two slides of this particular chapter. It's very important that we understand this concept because we discussed about the field of influence, and then depending on this field of influence, the field of psychophysical nature, how we acquire next body. So um, how to expand the consciousness, that is the topic of this particular slide and the next slide. So when any sensible man, that is knowledgeable man, when he ceases to see different identities and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, basically he sees that all living entities, they are pure soul at their heart, and even super soul is also existing. Everybody is on their own specific journey to progress in spiritual life. He attains a Brahman conception, knowing how the things are actually working out around him. And Krishna also gives very interesting example. As the sun illuminates the entire universe, so the living entity illuminates the entire body by consciousness. So how much is our influence is actually depends on our consciousness, how much consciousness we are investing in our field of activities. So like for example, if soul is not there in the body, we cannot see any symptoms of consciousness, not breathing, there may not be no movement at all, or he will not be able to hear anything, not see anything. As soon as presence of soul is gone, the soul's symptom, that consciousness, that will also be gone. So similarly, um, when we as the sun illuminates, and sun can illuminate a large area where whatever is been exposed to. So one, how to expand our consciousness, one who is actually able to influence, increase the area of influence, not only space but also in time, such person is actually a great person. And how to do that? This is the last slide of this particular discussion. So I'll come to the verse, but the point what I wanted to say, for example, if some great personality is writing some books, so even that his physical body may be passed away, but that knowledge will influence future generation who is reading them. It will help them to elevate their consciousness. So his area of influence is not very just limited to this particular space and time. It can exist beyond what we see as a space and time. So for a conditioned soul, consciousness is very limited to one particular body, what one body can do. But for liberated great souls, consciousness and their area of field, their area of influence, it can expand beyond that so-called kshetra. It can expand beyond space and time. And the last verse of this chapter says that one who sees with the eyes of knowledge. So if you remember, the Arjuna has got very special eyes to see this universal form of the Lord. So to understand this whole knowledge of this chapter and the following chapters, we have to develop these eyes of knowledge to understand the difference between body and knower of the body, and one who can also understand the process of liberation, how to utilize our knowledge, how to utilize this the facilities of this particular field of activity for betterment of our consciousness. And it helps us to how the three modes are working, how I should not degrade with this knowledge of Paramatma, knowing Paramatma is everywhere. I should not degrade my mind and consciousness, how I should use my mind to elevate my mind, how I can use this knowledge to elevate my mind. So one who understands the process of liberation from bondage of this material nature, he attains the supreme goal. So it's little technical, but I hope I could understand some of the concepts. And Anita ji, is your question answered, or please feel free to ask it again?
Yeah, it is answered. Thank you.
Okay. Um, Okay, so just to add something there. So while creation of this universe itself, from gross perspective, all the ingredients are provided, but how much ingredients we can access, what kind of transformation we can access, and it's not just the subtle ingredients, it's how much souls we can touch, how much happiness we can experience. All that actually comes in the field of activities, and all of that is actually getting decided that how we utilize the our own senses, our own faculties, our own influence, our own knowledge while being in this particular body. So, so this chapter is entitled as this Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. Is little complicated for analytical understanding, but if you can go through the slides and if you have any specific questions, I'm more than happy to discuss them. Okay, is there any specific questions for today's discussion? Please feel free to ask. Or any slides or whatever comes in your mind. Okay, if not, we still have 3.5 minutes and I'll try my best to summarize this session again. So we started discussing about how after Bhakti Yoga, this Jnana Yoga part starts, and this foundation actually helps us to perform our activities as well as Bhakti in a very in a very deep-rooted conviction manner. So Arjuna has multiple questions to start with. He asked about Prakriti, what is material nature? That is the field in which each of us perform our activity. Then the Purusha, one who is enjoying the soul, super soul. He specifically asked about knowledge. And then Krishna answers that knowledge part as understanding Kshetra and Kshetrajna, which actually results in developing specific qualities to become more knowledgeable. And of course, the goal of knowledge is to approach the super soul. So let me just jump to this slide. So all these qualities, the humility or spiritual master, approaching spiritual master, getting detached, even-mindedness, all these various qualities helps one to approach, become very knowledgeable and approach the super soul. That is the purpose. Then we discussed the field of influence, then how each of us, maybe our work, our home, or whatever activities we are doing, that is our kshetra, and we are influencing that kshetra. The overall purpose of knowing kshetra and knowing kshetrajna is how much knowing that what are our limits, and within that limit, what best we can do in given circumstances, what best we can do. That is the purpose of understanding the difference between kshetra and kshetrajna. Now, after this, we also discussed about how each of us, the field of concern, field of influence, how it overlaps, and how super soul, I mean, this concept of super soul knows all the fields of activities. So naturally, if I want to resolve any problem which is beyond my influence, whom can I approach? Super soul. So with the power of prayers, we can actually accomplish a lot of things which are practically not possible with our own limited influence. So that's the purpose of this slide. And we also discussed about Prakriti, link between soul and Prakriti, how the soul gets embodied in this body because he wants to keep on enjoying the results of his activities. This goodness, passion, ignorance, various kinds of material modes of nature, they keep the soul bounded. And as long as we are trying to enjoy results of our activities, we will remain embodied. So the more on this particular modes of nature will come in the next particular chapter, chapter 14. And very interesting things which we discussed about understanding super soul, how he's present everywhere, he's present in our heart, how he's well-wisher, and specifically how we can approach super soul and realize through the process of dhyana, jnana, nishkam karma, or bhakti yoga. We also discussed about process of transmigration, and specifically we understood the process of expanding consciousness, how by approaching supreme personality of Lordhead and expressing our desires in a proper way, we can influence across space and time. So thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please post it in the group and we'll discuss in the next sessions as well. And please be tuned for this session of last few chapters. Let's end our session by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. Hare